Hello, I finally finished building up this Sky Hunter style stacked slices method of building plane. It's been a while, mainly I was just waiting for stuff to arrive. I actually bought a motor and I bought the wrong one. This is the right one, but the first one that I bought was way too big. Somehow I think I might have just clicked on the wrong thing actually. But anyway, each time you make a mistake like that, it takes about 2 weeks for the stuff to get here, so that's why it's been a month or so since I was last talking about this plane. And you can see I've made a rather ugly looking tail from foam board there. And what else have we done? Put some ailerons on, ESC and stuff inside. Not much changed in here, just a receiver and ESC in there. So what I'll do now is I'll show you some photos that I took and a little bit of video while I was doing that. And if you're not interested to see that and you just want to see some flying, hopefully there'll be a little annotation on the bottom of the screen here where you can go to if you just want to see it fly.
This is how I decided to attach the booms to the wings. Just cut some pieces of plywood on my CNC machine. So there's 4 where the boom goes through, and then this last one is just to stop it to make sure it stops at the right position. This boom is 6mm. Yes, that's right, 6mm. It's very thin, and I thought that it might be too floppy. Turned out to be okay. But if I was doing this again and I had a couple of 8mm booms sitting around to use, I would have used them instead of the 6mm, but I didn't have any, so I just went with the 6 and it was okay. And so I just glued those up with epoxy like that and glued them onto the wing with Gorilla Glue like this. This is just chopping the trailing edge of the wing, and I glued a little bit extra airfoil onto the end here just to cap off this last section where it was supposed to have one more section. So that's what this one is, and that's what it looks like after sanding. And this trailing edge section here I cut out to make ailerons, and to determine the size of these I basically just copied off the mini talon ailerons, but I made them just a little bit bigger because the overall wingspan of this plane and the size and everything is just slightly bigger than the mini talon. So after I cut them out like that, they were just super floppy, so I put a little bit of 1x3mm carbon fiber strip inside them like that to just make them a little bit stiffer. That's the servo. Now the other end of the boom at the tail is going to have this sort of a system where I have a bunch of aluminium tube that I bought off Hobby King ages ago that I never used, and like a lot of things I have a lot of things that are just sitting around waiting for some use to come for them that I never knew what I was going to use them for, but all of a sudden one day I need to use them. So this is one case of that, and it's the perfect thing because it's 7mm outside diameter and this is 0.45mm thickness, so that means that the inside diameter is just a smidgen over 6mm, so it fits on here and it slides up and down quite nicely. So this lets me move the tail section up and down on the booms quite nicely. And my original plan was to use foam again, the building foam, to make the tail planes out of. So I actually went as far as cutting out the sizes that I was going to use, and I thought I would sand these down and make a sort of a really nice looking tail in the same way that I'd made the wings. But I just figured it wasn't really worth it, so in the end I went for foam board because I discovered that 2 thicknesses of this 5mm foam board folded over like that was almost exactly the same thickness as a servo, the little servo down there that I'm pointing to. So I was able to glue these together and then dig out a hole for the servo, and it fit in there just nicely. I found that if you simply fold this foam board over, it retains a lot of its original shape, or at least it wants to flick back quite strongly to being straight again. But if you heat it up with a hot air gun and then fold it over, it doesn't do that. On the flip side though, if you then want to unfold it again, it just breaks. So here's the construction of the tail, just some foam board. I put a little bit of the iron-on covering to function as a hinge just there, just to keep it a little bit stronger than simply the paper edge, the paper surface on its own. Skin is the word I'm going for. And then cut a bevel out of it, flight test style, like that. And yeah, it was it's a little bit heavier than I wanted, so that's 90 grams just for the foam board alone. Servo like that, and then I glued this onto the aluminium tube, and I went a little bit heavy on the hot glue because I was kind of worried that it wouldn't hold together very well, but I think I was unduly concerned, and it would have been okay with a lot less glue. Yeah, so it's 102 grams at that point, and then in the middle, because I wanted to put a camera on top of the tail, I wanted to have a flat piece with a place to strap on a run cam there. So that's what it looks like when it's all put together upside down. And I was again worried that it wasn't going to hold together too well there, which probably would have been okay, but just in case, I put a little carbon fiber stick across the center like that.
I was planning to have 4 holes here, but because of the way this is glued together in the middle, the seam with the Gorilla Glue is quite hard, so it's difficult to drill through it without sort of slipping off to the side and going crooked everywhere. So I'll just stick with 2 of these little plug bits, and it's probably enough actually.
The reason I'm fussing over this connection between the motor mounting plate and the tail of the plane itself is because I was planning to use a normal propeller, not a folding propeller, and there's no sort of obstruction below the tail of the fuselage like on the Mini Talon that would prevent the prop from striking the ground when it lands. So I was expecting to have some fairly strong hits coming into this section here, so I added a little bit of fiberglass around the side. This was also partially just to let me practice using epoxy and doing fiberglass stuff a little bit more, and I think it turned out pretty well, so that's some photos of that.
Okay, so that should give you a pretty good idea of how it was all put together. Now, just in case I didn't mention it in that sequence, I do have a few concerns about this. So there's 3 main concerns. The first is the weight. When I put the 4S 8000 mAh battery in here that I'm pretty much going to have to use to get CG in the right place, it comes to an all-up weight of 1.8 kilos, which is 200 grams heavier than I fly my Mini Talon, which is already fairly on the heavy side. The other problem, or potential problem, is that from this point outward, there's only a 10mm wooden dowel as a spar. So when you put the battery in and you go like this, it's quite flexy. Even now, without the battery, it's quite flexy. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see this just go and break there at some point. Another problem is that the tail is a bit heavier than I wanted, which is why I have to use the big battery that I was just saying about. I could slide this forward to, make it less tail heavy. That would work. So I might end up having to try that. I don't know. But the other problem with the tail is that these 6mm carbon fibre rods, tubes, are a little bit bendy. Actually, not too bad, Yeah, but I'm just sort of worried that the tail might start to go like this a bit and flutter, because it's like 110 grams or something way out there on these 2 little booms. And other potential issues is that I haven't glued or fixed the wings in. They're only held in by friction, and the fact that these 2 rods, you can't really pull the wing out at the moment because the rod will go with it, and the rod wants to, I'm calling the rod the tube, wants to sort of bring it in. So that should stop the wings from completely falling off, but they're not actually glued or stuck in. Otherwise, I think this should be alright. Those wires are just dangling out there at the moment. Not really foreseeing any problems here. I put a bit of fiberglass on the nose, just in case I didn't mention that earlier. Mainly just to practice my fiberglassing skills, really. Anyway, let's take it for a fly.
Okay, all systems go. It's a great day for it. The wind is coming directly at me up the slope, which is exactly what I wanted. Having a little bit of trouble with this ESC. It's like even a half a millimetre of stick upwards and the motor starts spinning. And I don't want it to spin while I'm launching because see where my hands are there? Anyway, let's do it. Could be worse. Just have to remember I'm not flying in auto level mode. That's doing all right. Very touchy. I'm only able to make tiny movements on the stick. See what a glide does. Hey. Man, for a plane that felt like such a heavy lump when I was holding it in my hand just now, feels pretty good. Had some holes in it to mount a flight controller. I wasn't really thinking it would be worth putting a flight controller on it because I wasn't expecting it to fly so efficiently. This is about quarter throttle. Okay, it's too slow for that. Okay, almost half throttle now. But having seen this, even with, watch out for that, as I get about here it's going to be bumpy, I think. Oh no, wasn't too bad. Let's do that from the other side. So I'm just under half throttle, which is quite good. There's not much stability in roll. I think those wings actually have a little bit of anhedral in them. Let's come past. Motor on. Hell, it ain't too bad, you know. It's better than I expected. The wings don't seem to be flexing, although it's a bit hard to tell from here, I suppose. So, might just land it and put a camera on the tail, because I didn't do that initially because I was worried about the weight being a little bit too heavy, but from what I've seen here, it can carry a fair bit more than it is carrying, and it was quite easy to launch it too. I didn't have any trouble with that. Let's do a low pass. The prop brake is on, but it's not able to stop the prop spinning. Nice. This is just a practice run, I think. Whoops, I didn't want it to go up like that. Why did that happen? Okay, that's a dumb idea. Let's come from the other side where there's no sun in my face. Okay, hopefully this is going to land alright. Oh boy. Come down, please. Down. Oh, the prop. Oh. Still had quite a bit of energy there, didn't it? Hopefully the prop will be alright. My plan was to look at the prop. What I usually do is, if the prop brake is working correctly, like it actually stops the prop from moving, as it's coming into land, you can see if the prop is going to hit the ground or not, like if it's level. And if it's not level, you just spin the motor a bit and hopefully it will stop next time at a position that's level. But anyway, seems to be alright. Oh, the motor's quite hot. Oh, no, that's alright. What is the ESC like? That's the other thing I need to check, because the ESC's inside here. Yeah, a little bit warm. No problem. Okay, I put the Runcam 2 on the back there now, and unfortunately to meet the CG, I wasn't able to put the battery forward far enough, so I had to slide the whole tail forward on these rails here, which is fortunately quite easy to do. I had to move it about that much. I don't think it's going to really change things all that much. And I noticed that the prop now is making a bit more of a buzzy noise than it was before, so I'm thinking it might have actually got a little bit bent or something during that landing, but anyway, should be okay. So let me just turn the cameras on. Oh, and I changed my expos to give me a little bit more range of movement on the stick. Okay, now I feel like I can make smoother turns and stuff. Oh, this is good. This is real good. Oops, pitch down a bit. Glide. But as it happens, the thruster line is actually going a little bit above the tip of the nose of the plane, which is actually might be a good thing. Man, it's quite stable now. I'm not sure if it's because of my expo change or because of the tail change, but it doesn't seem to be rolling quite as much as it was before. Oh yeah, and I can move my sticks quite a lot. I mean, I can, with the expo, I have a lot more precise control now. This is really good. Let's do a power on low pass. Yeah, man, it's quite nice. One thing I did not do before was trim. So let's see what happens when I let go of the sticks here, right about here. Pitches down. Okay, so let's see if I can trim it without screwing anything up. Well, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see all too well because I'm using the Runcam 2, which doesn't have that great wide dynamic range, and what you're looking at there with the sunset is about as bad as it gets, I think, but hopefully in this situation when I turn around a little bit like this, it should be better. See if I can glide all the way over to me. Power on. Oh, it does pitch up a bit, actually, with power. I went from 0 to 60% power there, roughly, so it does pitch up when you do that, which is a little surprising. Okay, let go of the stick again. Okay, I still can't quite trim it enough, you know? Oh, no, 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 no. Probably should have the power on while I'm doing that, but man, it's going to take. Okay, that's pretty good. I think I'm going to hit the limits of my pitch from here. Yeah, it's still going down. Another thing I wanted to check. Okay, it's almost trimmed now. No, it's still going down. Damn it. Another thing I wanted to check was the roll rate, so let's give that a little check. I don't really want to do a roll or anything because the battery's not really stuck in very well, but I will give it just one quick try. Yeah, so that's the roll rate. Sufficient, but nothing spectacular. It's not supposed to be an aerobatic plane or anything. It's supposed to be a sort of a efficient long-distance cruiser like the Mini Talon. A little bit slow there. Yeah, the prop is vibrating, or the motor shaft is vibrating. But the wind has calmed right down, so I'm really hoping that the tail is not fluttering and, whoops, and that your view from the camera there is nice and smooth. Let's do that again. The glide. So look at those cows there, they don't care. Okay, so if you go from 0 to about 40 or 50% throttle, you don't get any pitch down or pitch up or whatever it was. It doesn't change. But if you go to about 60% or more, it does sort of make a difference. Okay, so I'll turn the motor off here. Yeah, it doesn't make much difference. Rudder turn, lots of rudder, rudder off, motor on. Cool. Well, it's flying pretty well. I don't have a battery checker on there, but my last flight went from about 4 volts to 3.9 volts, so I don't think it's really in any dire need of suddenly landing. Let's try a really close pass. Gliding. Okay, not gliding. See if I can do a stall test again and show you what I was seeing before, because you probably wouldn't have been able to see that just from my hat cam because the distance was too far. But let me just turn it around. Oops. Okay, now reduce the motor to not much and I'll pitch back a bit. Okay, so there's a stall. See if we can get another one. That's another one. See how it tips to the left just a little bit? Another one. Try again. Ready? Yeah. Yeah, so it tips, I mean it lowers the left wing just a bit every time for some reason. Yeah. With the motor the way it is, I don't really want to try a full throttle run, and also I'm worried about the tail flutter and maybe even wing flutter at full speed. What else can we do? Did I try rudder? I did try rudder, didn't I? Let me just get a bit higher and I'll show you what full rudder looks like. Okay, here's full rudder. Ooh. And again, other way. That's nice. So it actually rolls in the direction that your rudder is turning. What's that called? Proverse yaw? Proverse roll, sorry. Let me do it a little bit less extreme example. So I'm going to yaw to the left now without rolling. Yeah, and it rolls for me. And yaw to the right without rolling. Wow, pitches down a lot. Well, probably just about done here, aren't we? Let's do another glide past. Whee! Might start to think about landing now. Fortunately, with no wind, I can land in the other direction now. Seems like that motor is not getting cooled very well, maybe, because it was quite a bit warmer than I thought it would have been. It's a 3536, 900 and something, 950 kV maybe. And it's spinning a 9x6 propeller, which is basically the same as what I have on my Mini Talon, and a 4S battery. Although, come to think of it, I've never really measured the temperature of my Mini Talon motor after a flight, so maybe it's the same. Oh no, it's definitely not quite right, is it, that motor? I guess it's just that at some RPMs it sounds alright. Oops. Should have let the motor off a little bit earlier perhaps. But oh, it's about the same as before. Yeah, it's definitely warmer than I would expect. But the vibration is not coming from this area. I think it's coming from this area, which would make sense because that landing that we did before was pretty rough and the prop was like, you know, it was like that and it was bouncing around on the prop. So it would stand to reason that something's got a bit bent in here, which is a bummer because that was like the first time I've ever used this motor. Oh well. I might just push my luck and try doing another launch, but this time no wind and I'm on fairly level ground. It's just a slight slope down there. I just want to see how feasible it is to launch in less than ideal conditions. I think it'll be alright, especially with the trim that I've given it now. Okay, no worries. Just got to give it a big old shove. Alright, see if I can do a slightly better landing now. Oh man, I can't see. Ooh boy. Ah, that's what I wanted. Always nice to finish the day on a nice landing, isn't it?